All right. And picking up where Zay left off as we reach the second half of the show is talking about, talent and teams winning back to back. And I think it perfectly transitions us into this topic right now, talking about statement wins, and the question that we have: did the statement wins over the weekend prove that we are on a collision course for Celtics Nuggets finals, right? The Nuggets is a team that won the championship last year, and they are looking to go back to back. Is that a possibility, Zach? The question is at the bottom. Zach, I'll start with you. Talk to me.
Yeah, well, I have some thoughts on the Celtics actually to start. I did watch that game against the Warriors on Sunday,
Me too.
and it's crazy, man. Like this team, their starting five is elite. They've had a phenomenal season, right? The record is sitting here at like 50-12. It's been a crazy regular season. I actually think you can make the case, and I'm curious how you feel about this, that Jason Tatum could be in the MVP conversation because he's the clear-cut best player on the clear-cut best team in the league. But with that being said, I think there's a lot of pressure on this team to win a championship this year and no other year. There's no time to waste. Like, they have to get it done this year. And if they don't, I think we should be talking about massive, massive changes in the offseason, because I think there's a good chance a team like the Knicks in the offseason gets a legit number two or a co-star to pair with Jalen Brunson. The Bucks are still going to be in the mix. We're going to see how things work out with Giannis and Dame, but if it doesn't work out, there's a good chance they get another star, or Giannis could go somewhere else, like maybe a Golden State, which would not be a great spot for Boston. Denver, we know, isn't going anywhere. The Lakers, I think there's a good chance that they're going to get like a scoring guard, like maybe a Trae Young or a Donovan Mitchell in the offseason. I think the Boston Celtics are the definition of championship or bust, and there's no doubt that they have had the best regular season. I think you could go either way. Boston or Denver is the best team in the NBA right now, but Boston, they have a top 5 point differential right now of all time. At this point in the league, like they're putting up historic numbers right now. And I do have a few concerns, though. I'll say this. We know they're super reliant on the three, and that in the past has been a detriment of some teams in the playoffs and making long runs. And also, I find it interesting how quickly the opinion and the narrative has shifted on Joe Mazzulla. Because I remember not that long ago, like when this team went down 3-0 in the Eastern Conference to Miami, people were calling for this guy's job. And it was clear that the players on the Celtic team didn't command respect for him. They looked at Marcus Smart. They looked at other players on that team opposed to the guy that's coaching it. Now, there's no doubt, like when you have Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis as like secondary and tertiary pieces in your starting five, Derek White, like that is a ridiculously talented team, and they should have championship expectations. But I will say, again, I'm not ready to just say, oh, Boston's winning the NBA Finals. I'm not even definitely 1,000% ready to say that this Boston Celtic team is coming out of the East, because the one team I'd be very terrified of if I'm Boston is the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, and the team that has been to 2 out of the last 4 NBA Finals, and that's the Miami Heat. And they are also just one Jimmy Butler 3-point shot away from making 3 out of the last 4 NBA Finals. And I think this version of them, with Terry Rozier now in the mix, without Kyle Lowry, it's been better than the Miami teams of years past. You hope that Tyler Hero is healthy when we get to the playoffs. He's out right now. But Miami, they're about a game and a half back out of the 4 seed. And if that's Boston's second round playoff matchup, I know their fans are going to be absolutely terrified. But again, if they don't win the championship this year, I think changes have to be made.
Yeah, I want to start off with Boston like you, because I have more to say about Boston, even though we're going to talk about the Nuggets after. To answer the question outright, I think we are on a collision course. Granted, this was the prediction that I had anyway in the offseason, so there's no reason for me to back off of that right now. I think these two teams are in great shape, but championships are not won right now. And although Boston is dominating the league right now, I mean, you look at the last, I believe, 6 of their, wins of their 11 game win streak. I mean, wins have come by 50, 17, 14, 28, 52. I mean, they're dominated teams. However, I've seen this movie a few times. It's a different movie, and I'm gonna explain why. But I've seen a similar movie in retrospect. Last year they peaked around Christmas. And that's the biggest question for me: is are they peaking too early? Last year they peaked around Christmas. The year before that they were 25 or 25, and they peaked at the right time. Went on the finals run. Okay, but last year I think they peaked a little bit too early. They ran out of gas. Miami sent them home in the Eastern Conference Finals in a tight Game 7, right? Even though it was a blowout in Game 7, but it was a tight series. But now you look at this team, and this is where the movie's a little bit different for me, though, right? Although they are dominating teams right now, two things, right? Number one, this season has shown me that the Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum pairing could actually work and is actually working. And it's funny because these brothers played together for a long time. Okay, I remember being at my brother's house. This when he lived in Harlem. He's in California right now. This before I went to college. I remember watching the Eastern Conference Finals. I believe it was Game 7 against the Cavaliers. And I remember seeing Jaylen Brown, young baby Jaylen Brown, baby Tatum. And I'm saying to myself, damn, these two guys have a lot of potential. They should be back here and win a championship in the future. And that has never happened, but not to this point that I realized that it could actually work, because a lot of the years was it's your turn, my turn, ISO type offense. And this is the first year where I can honestly say they going off together. I mean, Sunday they went off together. And then B, what makes this movie a little bit different is their surrounding cast around those two guys is different, and it complements them greatly. Kristaps Porzingis being able to space the floor, have post up opportunities. Derek White being able to space the floor. Drew Holiday. I mean, think about the game plan that the Warriors had, because I watched the game myself on Sunday, even though I ain't watching for long because the game was over by halftime. I was out. But the game plan that the Warriors had against the Celtics, which was dare Jaylen Brown to be great. Leave him open. Okay. Dare him to shoot. Dare him to be great. Jaylen Brown answered the call. Okay, he did. He had 29 points in the game. I believe he had 19 in 6-7 minutes. He was going off, right? And that's what the Warriors live with. Now, the question is, I'm pretty sure a lot of teams are going to do it in the playoffs. They're going to dare Jaylen Brown to be great. They're going to adopt that same model. Just didn't happen to work for the Warriors, but other teams are going to do it. Why? Because it's pick your poison. I mean, you look at the numbers here of 3-point percentage. Drew Holiday is shooting 45% from three. Derek White and Al Horford are shooting over 40% from three. Tatum and Kristaps are shooting over 37% from three. So it's like, okay, I'd rather Jaylen Brown shoot the three because he's the lowest percentage, on the team, and he made them pay, right? So you have to take those dynamics into the equation. Now, can that happen consistently? Okay, can we get Jaylen Brown to be reliable in those high-profile games? We'll see. Same thing with Tatum in those high-profile games. Can we get him to be the quote-unquote MVP in consideration type Tatum, right? Another thing, too, that I think the Warriors did, and I'm not going to put too much stock in these games in the regular season. I'm not, but it's just more me looking long-term. But talking about the game in particular, before I come back, is that I'm not going to overreact to this game, right? Even though the Warriors are playing well, they were playing well prior to this drumming, but it's the way how they played the Warriors too, right? The experience that they learned from the finals when they didn't know how to guard Steph. They were playing this drop back under Ime Udoka, where they drop back and allow Steph Curry to pull up uncontested from three and make wide open threes, right? That's not how you guard a guy like Steph Curry, giving him the space to jack up a three-pointer. That's why he was shooting crazy in the finals, right? That's why they won the finals ultimately. He took over the game. But in this game, they jammed Curry up. They was physical with Curry, and it was in tune with his stats. 0 for 10 from three or something to that effect. He didn't make 1 3 in the game, right? He was 2 for 10 from the field. Right? It was indicative of how they played Curry. And the Warriors' formula this year, more so than any other years, is simple. Take away Curry. You take away Curry, you got money. And that's exactly what the Boston Celtics did on defense, was take away Curry. And that's why they, literally beat them down on Sunday. It was a Sunday night massacre, Sunday evening massacre.
That's
what it
Boston
was.
Massacre.
Literally, okay, part 2. But I think for me, going back to the Celtics before we go to the Nuggets here, is I think it's time. They have to win a championship this year. There's no excuses. Okay, this tandem has been together for so long. There's a lot of financial, aspects of this equation. They got to go and they got to win the championship mentally. Are they strong enough to withstand teams that are going to play hard, like Miami, like the New York Knicks? Can they withstand that and be mentally strong, knowing that they have the better talent than anybody they come across, even the Nuggets? Okay, that we can literally, make our shots and defend at a high level and win games and adapt, right? The shot not falling. Can we go to the basket and get opportunities there, right? Can we take advantage of Kristaps Porzingis post up opportunities, right? We can't live and die by the three. That's a very good point. I've seen a lot of teams be so 3-point invested and it gets sent home. The Rockets being one of those teams, right? Even the 76ers was a 3-point shooting team kind of last year, right? I've seen it so many times. These 3-point shooting teams, get sent home in the playoffs. So we'll see what happens with the Boston Celtics, but I think they are gearing up for a finals run. I think they can make the finals clearly. And yeah, I'll leave it at that with Boston for right now.
Yeah, just on that note, and then we'll get into Denver. The thing that's interesting to me is like the point you made about Tatum and Brown and their ability to play together. Like I'm still not there. I need to see them get it done in the finals, and that would be including beating Denver in a possible finals matchup. The history of the NBA tells us that we very rarely see the two number one seeds go at it in the NBA finals. And to that point, like who even knows if Denver is going to be the number one seed in the West? I don't even know if it matters, but they kind of seem like a team to me that has, I don't want to say is coasted through the regular season, but you could tell that their number one priority is just getting to the playoffs healthy. And once they get there, just, do whatever it can to defend the title and repeat. But my thing with Tatum is, and I'm conflicted here a bit because I said it. I think he belongs in the MVP conversation. I think he's had a phenomenal season. And I do think at times some of the hate he gets, I don't want to call it unfair, but because I don't think it's necessarily unfair. But for example, when you're comparing him to a guy like Joel Embiid, Jason Tatum has literally been to the Eastern Conference Finals just about every year he's been in the league. I believe there's only been 1 or 2 years that since he's been in Boston that the Celtics haven't made the Eastern Conference Finals when Embiid can't even sniff getting there. Meanwhile, I feel like a lot of people, when they're ranking their top players in the league, most people are going to have Embiid over him. So from that aspect, I think he could get unfairly criticized at times. But I also think deep down, I have my doubts if he could be the best player on a championship team. Now, maybe this Boston team is so talented that they're the outlier and they could be like the 2004 Detroit Pistons. I guess what my point is, in the history of the NBA, we have a little bit of a blueprint on if you're going to win a championship, you're more likely going to need one of the 5 best players in the NBA on your team. And I don't know if I could firmly put Jason Tatum in that conversation. But maybe the Celtic team is just so talented and their starting 5 as a unit is so good, it might not even matter.
That's a very good point about the conundrum with Jason Tatum, right? Because a lot of people want to, name him an MVP favorite or front runner or in a discussion right now. And clearly Tatum hasn't always shown up in the big game. I thought game 7 of the 76ers series last year, he went off in that game, but then he had the game before that where he was like 0 for 8 and didn't score no points at a halftime. But I think
and
that,
remember too what he did when Brown got hurt. His playoffs last year was so weird because you bring it up. Game 6 against Philadelphia, the first 3.5 quarters, he stunk. He couldn't make a shot. Philadelphia, if you remember, was up 3-2 in that series. Boston was facing elimination, and after a crap game, he basically put his team on his back in the last couple minutes and willed them to victory. And then in game 7, he broke the record. He dropped like 50 plus. And then in the next series against Miami, Jaylen Brown gets hurt in game 7 and he's nowhere to be found. That's
nowhere
the
to be found. In the finals, remember, he had
exactly.
a historically bad finals, shooting wise. And I think with Tatum, I think it's consistency, right? That's what separates, guys like Joel Embiid and Jokic is that they are consistent. Like whether or not we want to talk about Joel Embiid in the playoffs and showing up, but for the most part, in the average regular season game or even the average playoff game for the most part, especially early in the series, one thing we know that we're going to get from Joel Embiid and guys like Jokic is consistent numbers on a night-to-night basis. But I do think Tatum's impact comes in other areas, like reading the game, making the right pass, defending well. And that's a Jason Tatum conundrum. But I do think, to your point, and why I'm still confident, massively confident in the Celtics team, is that they've been down the road before. They made the finals before. So they should have won the finals before with the dynamics that you're talking about, right? But I do think this year's team has the infrastructure around Tatum and Brown to be able to mask any questions we may have. Like, for example, the fourth quarter, who's going to step up and be that guy? Well, maybe it might be my day, okay, if I'm Jaylen Brown, right? If, for example, this was a playoff game and the Warriors decided to dare me to be great and leave me open for the three, yeah, it's my game, right? So I'm going to go ahead and go off. Derek White showed you that he has a championship mindset mentality, right? Because even that play at the end of the buzzer against Miami, right? He had the IQ to go after the ball and with the putback and win the game there. He's always been a smart basketball player. He's a smart basketball player. Same thing with Drew Holiday. Very smart. Okay, he makes the right play. He doesn't need to score to be effective. He can affect the game in other ways. And the Kristaps, addition to this team has opened things up, especially the driving lanes for guys like Tatum and Brown to do what they do. So I think it's so much talent on this team and guys that know their roles. It's not stepping into each other's boundaries like in years past, where, for example, Marcus Smart wants to take a shot and he's not wide open. He wants to be the hero. He wants to jack up a 3-point shot in the fourth quarter of a playoff game when you have my guy Tatum, who's supposed to be the best player on the team, and you have Jaylen Brown, who's the second best. No, I want to be the hero today. You don't got to worry about that. Everybody knows their role on this team, which is something that I don't think they had any identity of knowing who was the leader. What's my role? What's your role? Where's my boundaries? Am I stepping out of it? I think they had that identity crisis back then. I don't think they have that identity crisis right now. And that's why I think this year's Boston team has the best shot to win the championship, even over the one that made the finals against the Warriors. All right, let's talk about the Nuggets. Let's talk about the Nuggets right now. Zach, I'll begin with you. How do we feel about the Nuggets after they win against the Lakers, where they stand right now currently in the regular season?
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying, man, like, I'm super fascinated by the Nuggets Lakers dynamic because it's clear Denver owns them, right? Like, they've won the last 7 games against them, even dating back to last year's playoffs. But it's so bizarre, man, because when I watch those games, they're super competitive and it feels like they could go either way. But I guess just in the last 5 minutes, Denver, they just have that clutch gene and they do whatever is needed to get the victory. So here's my thing with Denver, right? Again, I think they kind of seem like a team to me right now that when they turn it on, there's no doubt they're elite. They're an unreal team, but they're kind of just coasting through the regular season a bit. And they're really just focusing on getting to the playoffs healthy and doing whatever they can to win another championship and to defend their title. My concern with Denver going into the season was without Bruce Brown coming off the bench, would they have enough, especially in those non-Jokic minutes? A common trend I feel like with Denver is they'll start games really hot, and then especially like early on in that fourth quarter, they'll let their opponents kind of get into the game a little bit, make it more competitive, and make their opponents think they have a real chance. But then when Jokic comes back into the game for closing time, he just snatches their souls, and they always end up getting the job done. The thing I've noticed about them too is that when their starting 5 is healthy, Murray, Gordon, Jokic, Porter, KCP, when those 5 guys are on the floor, they do look borderline unbeatable. But I just don't think this team has nearly as good depth as they've had in years past. And I think that's something they really need to focus on. Like, by the time we get from now to the playoffs, is there a guy coming off that bench that could really help them and be a consistent player that gives them good minutes? I think that's something that they really need to focus on. But there's no doubt this team is they have that championship DNA. I was super impressed with their finals run last year and going all the way. And I got to be honest, and I'll ask you, man, like, if you give me, and for the record, I don't think this is going to be the finals. I think it's too good to be true. The Boston, Denver, the 2 best teams in each conference, the league just rarely finishes that. Like, it reminds me of the NFL, right? Ravens, 49ers. We're on a collision course for the Super Bowl. There's no way either of these 2 teams lose, and we know what ended up happening. I would take Denver right now in a best of 7 series over Boston, but I'm curious if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think last year they would have played in the finals because it was shaping up that way last year. On top of that, right? So we do have to realize that although there's injuries that come into play, although matchups come into play, last year the Nuggets were pretty consistent. They were the number one seed all year, and I think that the league and fans penalized them for it in a sense because it was like, oh, okay, well, Jokic once again is having a monster regular season, but can he win the playoffs? And he showed you he could win the playoffs. Clearly, he won a championship. So they've been consistent. Last year they was very consistent and it stayed. So the thing is, the question that we have is, could that work out for Boston where they're consistent? They're the number one seed and they're playing well. They're peaking right now, but can they maintain that straight line of peaking all the way to the championship and potentially win it? And I think when you compare these two teams that they played last year, I would have went the Nuggets because I really think Jokic was playing out of his mind. He was cementing his flag as the best player in the world, and I think nobody would have stopped that. Jokic and Jamal Murray, the two-man game that these guys have. They have a good feel of the game together. So I think they were playing great basketball. They would have won a championship. They would have won in 6 games. Now this year, it's a different story because right now I just don't want to only live in a moment because I understand that the NBA season is so long and there's so many twists and turns and drops and all that, and you're winning, then you're losing, then you're in a little funk. That's the NBA. So I'm not trying to get caught up in what's happening right now. But it's hard for me right now, as of 6:25 p.m. We recording this show. A lot of y'all gonna see this 2 days later when it comes out on YouTube. For me not to go with Boston. Like I have to go with Boston. Anybody else but Boston right now, I just think that the only way I could say it's not Boston is if I think what happened to them in those fourth quarter situations, crunch time is going to continue to be a factor. Other than that, I have no analysis where I could give you that say Boston should not win the championship because they should. They have the better team. They have talent. They complement each other well. The Eastern Conference is way easier than the Western Conference we talking about here. They should be able to at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals, which mathematically gives you a shot to make the finals outright. So, you know, I think right now it's Boston's league. But once again, Zach, come, April, May, those things could change. But as far as the Nuggets, I do want to talk about them real quickly here because I don't think we need to see anything else. Like, for example, as far as this matchup against the Lakers, right? I didn't really take away anything that I didn't already know. Clearly, they better than that team. They beat them 4 times in the playoffs. They swept them. Okay, they beat them this year. Like, do we need to see more? Everybody keep having this facade that the Lakers are close. They're not close. They're moving further and further away. Okay, they are. And I think if anything, if there's any takeaway, it's more so what the Celtics did against the Warriors because the Warriors have beaten the Celtics before, and the Celtics made the necessary adjustments to show us how they can be Golden State now. The Lakers didn't do that in this game against the Nuggets. The media keeps pushing this narrative with LA. That's all they talk about is LA. And it's killing me because last year after game one, oh, we found something. They found something. They didn't even give the Nuggets credit for the win in the Western Conference Finals. It was, oh, the Lakers found something. Rui Hachimura was going to guard Jokic to protect Anthony Davis against Jokic, and clearly they got swept. Okay, in this game Saturday, right, instead of us talking about, the Nuggets once again beating the Lakers' ass, okay, oh, it's LeBron James for 40,000 points, okay? Like, we got to stop this. LeBron James, look, when you look at the Western Conference, bro, especially with the Lakers, LeBron James has to come to the realization that he's no longer chasing championships like he used to. Okay, he's chasing stats and achievements, personal achievements. Okay, because every time there's a record to be broken that he breaks, they always lose that game. For example, they lost the game on Saturday when he surpassed 40,000 points. Okay, then he surpassed 30,000 points prior to that. The Lakers lost that night. Okay, then he had the all-time scoring record. They lost that night to OKC. Okay, they always lose when he chases and he, breaks records. They have to come to the realization that a championship is not in their future right now, presently constructed. Okay, they don't make the same adjustments that the Nuggets make when it comes down to the fourth quarter. Okay, Mike Malone is not scared to go in his bench. So when you talk about the bench dynamic and how that probably be the only, level of concern when assessing this Nuggets team, I trust in Mike Malone to find those guys and give those guys minutes, and whoever steps up is gonna have to step up. But one thing that separates the Nuggets from a lot of these teams in the Western Conference, and why I do think when it's all said and done, they will be representing in the Western Conference in the finals, is the fourth quarter. In this game against the Lakers, they showed that. I have the best player in the world who is not scared to show up in the fourth quarter. I have Jamal Murray, who's built for moments like that. Okay, like Jimmy Butler in the playoffs. I'm built for the playoffs. I'm built for the fourth quarter. He was making shot after shot, clutch shot after clutch shot. And don't get me started. If Michael Porter, okay, which clearly is highly unsustainable, shooting 10 for 10 from the field, if he shoots well, even half that, like shoots well, like how he did in that game against the Lakers, the Nuggets are going to be a tough out. So, to me, Zach, in closing, the Celtics and the Nuggets are on a collision course. However, it's the NBA, long season, injuries, matchups, all those things are a part of spoiling what could be a collision course by these two teams.
Yeah, on that note, in the Western Conference, I'm wondering, like, and I know you just said like you would pick Denver to come out of the West. That's probably the logical choice, the logical decision right now. But how do you feel about their competitors? You know, Oklahoma City is a team that has really ascended this year. I've been very impressed with what they've been doing. The Clippers are interesting. They had a tough look last night, losing to the Bucks in Milwaukee, blowing a big lead without Giannis. Minnesota, they're the number one seed right now, I believe, and we don't even discount that. Like, we don't even really talk about them. Like, how, like, when you look at the contenders in the Western Conference, how are you feeling right now?
Yeah, we might as well start off with the number one seed right now. The Timberwolves. I think they are another example of a good regular season team that's probably going to be a first round or a second round exit. You know, they remind me of the Jazz. They had the number one seed and they got bounced. Like, I could see that being in the
There's one
Timberwolves.
common denominator there, right?
Yeah, I
With
mean,
their big man.
yeah. Woody Gobert, right? That's funny. I wasn't even thinking about it from that perspective, but I'm glad you brought that up. I think for me, they do have a good half court defense, and I think defense. They used to say back in the day wins championships, but they do have a good half court defense. I would give them that. But in the fourth quarter, I do not trust them. The same thing that I said about the Nuggets and why I trust them when it's all said and done is why I'm out on the Timberwolves. The fourth quarter clutch moments. They lost multiple games this year where they had leads. In the fourth quarter, they blew leads and blew leads. The last time they lost a game outright where they just didn't show up to work was probably January 3rd against the Pelicans, right? So that tells me a lot that mentally in the fourth quarter in clutch time, I can't trust a team like that, especially if this happened in the regular season. Okay, we know about the playing scenario, what happened last year. I believe they played the Lakers. You all know how that panned out last year. So in the playoffs, I don't trust them in the fourth quarter. I'm not going to rock with them. OKC, I think I think Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is the MVP to me right now, front runner. He's the MVP. I saw some stat last night. I think it was one of the commentators where I don't even want to misspeak, but it was like a certain amount of games where he was a leading scorer. It's a lot. Clearly, he means a lot to this team. Clearly, he's skilled, and I trust him in particular. And I trust they got a good team. They got a good foundation. However, they're young. Okay, they don't know what it is to be here with these expectations. They're very young. I'm not going to choose them. The Clippers. Health, once again, is a health factor. Kawhi Leonard, is he going to remain healthy? I don't trust James Harden in the playoffs. We all know that. I don't trust PG in the playoffs. We all know that. So do they have enough? Which you could argue they kind of do around the big three because they have good depth to overcome that. Sort of like with Boston, where you may not trust Tatum to give you consistency, but they have a good infrastructure around Tatum and Brown. Is it the same thing with the Clippers? They have a good infrastructure around their big three. We'll find out. The Warriors, too inconsistent, roller coaster. They losing, then they on a win streak, then they win 10 out of 12 games, and then you take away Curry. I think that's your formula. The Kings, they can run with anybody. They're a fast-paced team. They can run with anybody. But the Kings could get got. So I think for me, when you look around the Western Conference, if I had to play it safe right now, and clearly I think the Western Conference is clearly more wide open than the Eastern Conference, I would probably have to go with the Nuggets for right now. And those are my reasonings. The Suns will
Wow.
probably be the biggest threat to the Nuggets for me if you want. The Clippers is every year with the Clippers, the same thing, the same script, health, right? But on paper, healthy. Let's say the Clippers are healthy, then they're right there with the Suns. Matter of fact, I think I will pick them to be the biggest threat to the Nuggets over the Suns, right? I think it's the Clippers healthy, a healthy Clippers team will be the biggest threat, right? But the Suns are right there as well because they have guys that are not scared in the fourth quarter like Devin Booker to win a game, right? They have the depth, they have the gritty guys as well. They have guys like Royce O'Neal that knows his role. He can play his role on any team. Grayson Allen, excuse me, gritty, right? But they also got the closers. I like my team to be balanced. I like youth. I like veterans. I like gritty guys. I like depth, and I like my stars to bring me home. That's how the Nuggets won last year. They had very good depth around Jokic and Jamal Murray, right? You had Christian Brown who stepped up. You had Bruce Brown who stepped up. You had Michael Porter Jr. was struggling in his shot in the finals, but for the most part, he wasn't scared to shoot the basketball. You have guys like Aaron Gordon, the gritty guys, the guy that's going to lock down your number one option on offense on the opposing team, right? So they were very well put together as a team. And in the fourth quarter, I don't even got to worry. I know I got Jamal Murray who's going to go off. He's not scared at that moment. I know I got Jokic. So I like my team to have that. And I think the Clippers have that. And I think the Suns have that. And that's why I think they are the biggest threat to the team that had that in the past. And they still kind of have that, not as much depth. Don't get me wrong. But I still think the Nuggets have the common denominator, which is what Kansas City had. Zach, my last point. We did a topic, early in the year where we debated who was more likely to repeat as champions, Kansas City or the Nuggets, right? You picked Kansas City. Congratulations. They won. I picked the Nuggets. Even though I think Boston is going to win it, I won't be shocked that the Nuggets win it. And I won't be shocked if that question is invalid because both of them will probably end up winning it. But the reason why is because just like Kansas City, who clearly wasn't the more talented team, they had the championship DNA. They've been there, done that. That's what the Nuggets have.
And they have the best player in the sport by far.
And they have the best player on the sport.
To be honest, that's why I would have hesitation taking Boston over them in the series. But I agree.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, or leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.